This is the newborn father, Remy, a.k.a. Boats and Hose, for those of you that are joining me from the Wrestling Soup. Tonight, I'll be going through a little bit of a SummerSlam review myself, pretty quick. Most of the feelings that I have on the show are pretty similar to those that Mission Joey have, though a couple extra little things. So, roughly for the first maybe 15-20 minutes, I'll go through my feelings on the show tonight. Highlighting specific moments, specifically because my wife and I were watching it, and she's not really a wrestling fan. She was way back when, if you remember, way back in time to the very distant past, when Jeff Hardy wasn't fucking up pay-per-view main events with drug addictions, and he was still in WWE. That's back when she was still watching, so she has some interesting input into the pay-per-view that I wouldn't have had myself, but was still interesting nonetheless. And then the second half, I'll kind of do my regular shtick. So this is the home of the newborn father. This is my own podcast where I just kind of share some stories that I have based on my chronicles as luck would have it, a newborn father. My son is now 9 weeks old, and it's a completely different world. It's not anything that I actually would have imagined would have happened in my life, but it has, so it is what it is. So I like to share some of my experiences with that, because some people may not be parents, but will be sometime in the future. So there's some interesting insights there. So I'm just going to go down through the card. And like I said, a lot of my feelings are fairly similar. So the first match, Sheamus versus Randy Orton. Why? Why did this need to be on a pay-per-view? It seems like, and it's not even that it seems like, we've seen this match over and over and over again. Raw, SmackDown, probably main event, probably Lucha Underground. This match is replayed ad fucking nauseum, and I just can't stand it anymore. So I was really kind of in and out as far as my own cognizance of what was happening around me during this. I don't think I quite took a nap, but I was really fairly close, so I guess Sheamus won. But either way, it really wouldn't have mattered to me, because it's a back and forth thing that happens about every other week, and I can't take it anymore. The second match, all right, Mission Joey on the Soup said that the Fatal 4-Way for the Tag Championship was good. And I'll agree as far as it goes to the extent of, as a Fatal 4-Way for a tag championship, it was good. I would have much preferred just a straight match between the Primetime Players and the New Day. But it was okay. It was fine. The right people won. Right? New Day won. But what I will say, and I'll add this to the Soup's analysis and commentary on the match, is that by far, in the beginning of the match, before the bell rang, and after the bell rang at the end of the match, the one person that stood out as the most interesting, entertaining, and hilarious, really, was absolutely Big E. So he needs to keep that character, but divide himself from the actual team. Right? He needs to hang on to that and just move to his own singles star shtick using the same exact character. His dancing tonight was probably one of the highlights for me in the entire 4 hours. It was one of the only times that I actually laughed genuinely. Right? So there was a couple times, and again, I was watching with my wife, who's not a fan. So if you're watching wrestling with someone who's not exactly a fan, and you're trying to kind of coax them into pretending at least like they enjoyed themselves, then you'll half-heartedly cheer, even though you really want to cheer, and boo, right, the same way. And then you'll kind of laugh at something to kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, to get them into what's going on. But Big E's dancing before and after the match, I genuinely laughed at, and that actually got genuine laughter out of my wife, which was It was like the one moment probably in the entire thing, other than when Jon Stewart was on the show. Because whatever. I'll say this straight up. She wants to fuck Jon Stewart, which is totally fine. Because it's never going to happen, so whatever. I don't care. She can pretend that I'm Jon Stewart all she wants to, but it doesn't bother me at all. That's totally fine, because this shit ain't never going to fucking happen. So she genuinely enjoyed the entire time that he was on the screen. Again, fine. She likes him because he's a silver-haired fox. And she keeps telling me over the last few days that I've got a lot more white hair than usual, so I may be elevating a little bit. We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted as far as frequency over the next couple of weeks. So that was cool, but she laughed along with me to Big E in a genuine way, and that was really cool. So I hope at some point, because he is a funny guy behind the scenes, that they just let him do his thing. But I think he's really found a niche with being a nice guy behind the scenes and interpreting that in a heelish way on the camera. So I would like to see that evolved from here. That would be fantastic. As far as Ziggler and Rusev goes, I wholeheartedly agree with the guys. Apart from one another, great talents. This goes without speaking. They're fantastic. Together, and it absolutely has to do with the women. They drag the entire thing down. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And they've painted themselves into a corner, WWE, because they can't find a way to disconnect Lana from this Russian gimmick and have her wear acid wash shit, and it just doesn't work, right? So it's imagining Dolph Lundgren in Rocky if he wore acid wash jeans to his fight with Rocky, and it just doesn't translate well at all, right? So they absolutely need to find some other way to make this kind of connect with people, and the only way that I can see that is taking all four of the parts involved with the feud and exploding them as forcefully as they can away from each other. Otherwise, it's just dead. It's just dead in the water. And I didn't catch all of the reactions from the pay-per-view, but judging on what I did catch from this match while it was going on, nobody cares, and I think that that's the problem. There's just too many parts that don't fit together, but if you took one or two and, it could work that way. But as it stands, just not working whatsoever. The next match, Stephen Amell and Neville versus Stardust and King Barrett. I'm going to go further, and I'm really going to commend Amell's dedication to getting... again, very standard moveset, but not necessarily perfecting that moveset, but at least presenting it in such a way that he far surpassed Snooki in WrestleMania a handful of years back, right? So she did a handstand. Wow, fantastic. Amell really kind of overshot a little bit, and that was kind of the celebrity interaction takeaway that I had from the pay-per-view, was that between Amell and Stewart, it was obvious that they're both wrestling fans, right? So for the parts that they played, they actually played them as well as they could have been expected to, right? And in the case of Amell, actually, I would say, honestly, a little bit further than that, because he pulled out some moves without at least noticeably hurting himself or spraying anything, or, kind of the typical things you might expect from a celebrity interaction in the ring. And it was, it's, as a long-time wrestling fan, as a lot of you guys, certainly on the download when you listen later, would know, a lot of celebrity wrestling, when they do enter the ring, it doesn't really come off as very believable. But at the same time, you can tell when someone does. So, for instance, when Hugh Jackman comes to Raw, it's pretty limited in the amount of things that he does in the ring, but it's clear that he enjoys the product, and that goes a long way in making it believable. So it was really nice to see, and if you were going to have someone be in a match, then that was a nice pick, right? So there's far worse examples of when celebrities enter the ring. This was not bad. It was pretty good. And I'll also add, a lot of people really, really wanted, and I, to a certain extent I was one of them, wanted Stardust to return to his Cody Rhodes gimmick. And I really was one of them to a certain extent, but I'll hedge it in this way. When he tweeted out that his father told him, you finish what you start, or what, it was something along those lines. I'm heavily paraphrasing. What I took that in some small way to mean was that this angle was probably planned, obviously not years in advance, but enough in advance that it would make sense for the Stardust character to play out at least this far. Now, it would make sense for Cody Rhodes to come back as an actual, Cody Rhodes character after this point. So, we'll see where it comes from here. But I would like to think that this will actually kind of end up with him being back in his own Cody Rhodes gimmick. So he's been foiled by the superhero. Maybe now he can come back and be himself. We had the triple threat match. Again, much like the Dolph Ziggler-Rusev match, I didn't really pay much attention. Some of that was because my son was getting a little bit of fussy. A little bit of fussy. Jesus. Can you tell I've had a few beers tonight? He was getting a little fussy, and his fussiness was much more interesting in terms of what I should put my attention toward than this match. So that should probably say something. I don't care. I really don't care. I've kind of tuned out Big Show because he'll retire, but unlike the people in the crowds that chant, "Please retire," I can't even muster myself to feel that way. It's just kind of riding it out until it eventually happens, because otherwise, what are you going to do? Honestly, and I think that's kind of a going theme with a lot of the shows between the Soup and DTKC is if you feel that negatively against someone, just don't say anything, because no reaction is better than a negative reaction. And it's the way I feel about Big Show is, he's a quote-unquote giant. BFD. There'll be others, and I can't handle it anymore, and I'm just done. So, whatever. And then your only two options after that are Ryback and Miz, and I don't know what they're doing with Miz, right? His new quasi-evolution to his gimmick is okay. It's all right, but they're not making it important past his costume change. So there's no reason to believe that anyone other than Ryback would come out on top. So it is what it is. The surprise letdown of the night was absolutely, and I echo this from the fellas, Reigns and Ambrose versus Wyatt and Harper. Could it be more bland, right? Everyone was... A lot of people were expecting a fuck finish with maybe a new member of the Wyatt family, and I to an extent, was too, and then it was kind of dropkick down our throat that was wishful thinking, right? So they just teased us with enough indication that either maybe Ambrose was turning or we'd get a new member of the Wyatt family, and neither one happened. So once that didn't happen, then who gives a shit at that point? And that's really all there is to that. In a similar way, I was left with the same taste in my mouth with the Rollins-Cena match. Am I happy with the outcome? I'll accept it. I'd rather have Rollins have both titles than Cena. Right? I'd prefer that if either one was going to come out semi-clean, right? But a lot of people were expecting Sheamus to come down. And that's kind of what I was expecting too. So I kind of assumed two different potentials. Number one, Sheamus came down, interjected himself a la Rollins at WrestleMania, and won the heavyweight championship. Cena kept the United States title. That's it. The other option was that Rollins won both, and then Sheamus came down. Neither one of those happened. Rollins keeps both, so it's fairly interesting. I kind of expect Sheamus to take the World Heavyweight title tomorrow. I still expect Sheamus to replace Rollins as the cornerstone, quote-unquote, of the Authority. I still think that that's happening. But we'll see. You know, we'll see where it goes from here. I'm just not... I'm not invested in the way that I was, right? So something's going to happen tomorrow. Rollins is either going to lose one straight up, or he's going to be stripped of one a la Warrior, right, after WrestleMania 6. I don't see the title strip scenario happening. I just don't. I think they think that that's played out, and I can't absolutely disagree, and the reason for that is because I don't want to see another championship tournament. They've done that enough in the fairly recent past that I don't think we need any more of that. I think that's been played out enough. We can do something different, and I think that's going to be Rollins losing one, and I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be the World Heavyweight Championship, only because they've got Sheamus as the Money in the Bank. So it makes sense. It would make less sense for them to lose the United States Championship the night after. The far, almost dark horse scenario is that Cena wins the United States Championship back tomorrow as a rematch clause. I would assume they enact that at some point. I see that as kind of the dark horse. It makes more sense to me for the next pay-per-view. Sheamus cashes in on Rollins, wins the World Heavyweight Championship. He goes on to a different feud for the next pay-per-view, and at the next pay-per-view, we have Rollins-Cena in a rematch for the United States Championship due to the rematch clause that Cena has with his own title. I think that makes the most amount of sense to me. I don't exactly like it, but you know, it kind of is what it is, you know. And I'll that I can stomach, right? I can stomach that more than I can stomach what's going on with the next group of people in the next match. So I suppose 3-team elimination match with 9 women. That's a clusterfuck already. The way they did it at the last pay-per-view was the way they should have done it tonight. If you're going to do an elimination match, just have a rep from each team do an elimination style match and just do it that way instead. It's obvious that the only reason they did this was to keep the title on Nikki until she breaks the streak and becomes the longest running Divas champion ever. And my greatest hope is that as soon as she becomes the longest reigning Divas title holder ever, that they immediately retire that title and bring back the women's championship. Right? That's the only thing that I think will give us any flavor back in regard to the women. So every woman came out, and I threw down a challenge to her. I hit mute on my remote, and I said, all right, babe, here's what I want you to do. There's going to be 9 women that come out. Some are going to be less obvious than others, but there's going to be 9 women that come out. And I want you to tell me which woman is the daughter of Ric Flair? And obviously that's fairly obvious, but she's not really a wrestling fan at all. And she didn't even need to see Charlotte's face. As soon as the camera kind of came in behind Team PCB, or what the fuck ever. Just call it Submission Sorority. Fuck Bang Bros. Alright? Alright. Whatever. The camera came in behind the three of them, and she said the blonde is Ric Flair's daughter. That's her. Right? And I said, alright, well, I guess that makes sense, because he's blonde, she's blonde. Right? And as I'm saying that, the camera kind of curls around to the front of the three women, Paige, Becky, and Charlotte. And it gets to the front of them, and you can just see their faces. And my wife goes, oh. And that was her reaction to Charlotte's face. That was a woman's reaction to Charlotte's face. So, her athleticism, pretty hot. I kind of dig climbable women. I won't lie. My wife knows that. It is what it is, right? But my wife, shuddered at Charlotte's face. And she didn't, all right, let me hedge this by saying she didn't know the woman's nationality. But as soon as she saw a nice full-frame view of Becky Lynch's face, she goes, that fucking redhead is hot, right? So my wife feels incredibly accomplished every day because she has good taste in women, which is insane because she saw Becky Lynch and she says, okay, that bitch is hot. That redhead is hot. And I said, well, yeah, of course she's hot. She's Irish. You're Irish. You're hot. I married you. That's kind of the way it goes. Irish women are just plain beautiful. It just is what it is. And then I also pointed out the fact that Sasha Banks, who she kind of glazed over because, our son was being fidgety. She didn't get a clear view of Sasha Banks. And I told her, I said, and it was kind of a back view from the camera, so it was just the back of Sasha Banks' head. I said, that other redhead is Snoop Dogg's cousin. And I'm pretty sure Sasha Banks' cousin, right? Or niece or what. They're fucking related, all right? My wife is not going to fucking fact check this shit. So I said that it's cousin, and I'm sure I'm fucking wrong, but, whatever. So she said, I was right. She is Snoop Dogg's cousin. So she goes, really? Okay. Ricky, that's her brother. He's going to see Snoop Dogg next week at the fair. This is at the New York State Fair. I said, yeah, I know. And she kind of gave that up because she realized, I knew the conversation didn't go any further than that. She said, yeah, she's pretty hot too. And, yeah, I almost skipped the soup after show tonight because my wife and I have some things to talk about once I can get upstairs to the bedroom. And if you weren't aware, talk was a sarcastic word in that sentence, and there were absolutely quotes around it because there won't be any talking occurring at all. So I'm looking forward to that. It will be wonderful. So, moving on from there. And so, like I said, the right team won. PCB won. And, they've highlighted Charlotte in other matches, which good. They really need to. Charlotte and Sasha, and I agree with everyone. All of the callers to the various shows, the hosts of the different shows, Charlotte and Sasha need to be the cornerstone of this division. But it was really nice that they gave Becky Lynch that moment, right? So there's still the big quote-unquote four, really the big three, right? But there's still WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and Royal Rumble. And when I say it's really the big three, it's because Survivor Series hasn't fucking been Survivor Series in years. I think it's over a decade at this point. Survivor Series hasn't been itself, which they need to fucking stop, seriously. But at least at a big show, they gave Becky Lynch one little moment, and I thought that was really cool. That was really nice. So that was cool. So the next match, Kevin Owens and Cesaro. Kevin Owens goes over, which makes sense. I mean, he lost a big match at TakeOver the night before, so it makes sense that they give him the nod here. But is it possible at all for Cesaro to look more impressive and the management or creative team or Vince himself or Paul fucking Levesque himself or whoever, Triple H, whatever you want to fucking call him, is it possible for all those guys to give him a bigger middle finger, right? And that's not to say that I think he should have won. Not at all. That's not to say that I think he should have won. But we know that he's not escalating from here. Even if we consider the position of the match on the card, right? I have no reason to believe that the position of the match on the card and his it was a fantastic performance. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say 5-star, but it was a solid performance by both guys, Owens and Cesaro. But I still find it nearly impossible to believe that even with that really solid performance out of Cesaro, that they really take him serious and escalate him any further from where he is in this moment right here and right now. You know, which it's sad. It's a shame. And what's a further shame is I can say the same exact thing for Kevin Owens, right? So he won tonight, which is great in one sense, in a very small sense. But again, this was a win to kind of combat his loss yesterday, which was a much bigger loss than his win, you know, at this pay-per-view was. So I don't see this as benefiting either party, even though the match was solid, right? They both can sell. They both can perform well, athletically speaking. It was an entertaining match, even in spite of the crowd. The crowd was clearly tired at this point, but still, the match was entertaining. And both performers were entertaining. And I was able to tune the audience out and just enjoy it for myself. And even my wife was. She enjoyed it. She even said, "Who's the fat guy in gym shorts that jumped the barrier?" That's exactly what she said. That is exactly what she said. And my response was, that's, you know, I explained, well, that's Kevin Owens. That's kind of his shtick. He's kind of an everyman, but also a little bit of an alpha male at the same time. And she said, oh, okay, so he's a dick. And I said, exactly. That's his thing. So she enjoyed the match too, but we just can't expect much further from where it is right now. So, you know, it is what it is. Enjoyable match. I don't see it elevating either guy, at least in the immediate future. So then, end of the show, Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, the obvious choice for the main event, because even Rollins, Cena for both titles really couldn't eclipse this. They had to have a fuck finish. They had to. There was no other way that this could end than to have some kind of controversy, because it's just not believable for The Undertaker to beat Brock Lesnar clean. So I honestly think that they actually showed a fair amount of creativity in the finish. I think it could have been worse, certainly, but it was enough of a difference from the standard fuck finish that I could deal with it. It wasn't a tried and true formula with a rundown or with the lights going out and someone appearing, or a little bit of my fear was that this would be where Sting showed up, even more so than the former Shield and Wyatt family tag match. It was really my fear that Sting would show up here to kind of begin the road to WrestleMania for a potential Sting Undertaker match, and I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm ecstatic that didn't happen. And I'm also glad that they gave Lesnar room to argue that he actually won the match, even though in the record book it'll go for The Undertaker. What I don't like is that immediately after the match, they had Heyman point that out to everybody. I think it would have been nicer to let that brew amongst fans for 24 hours until at least Raw tomorrow, if not a little bit further than that. Only because it wasn't something that a lot of fly-by-night casual fans would have caught. So it would have been interesting to have that debate going on between even hardcore fans against hardcore fans, and then casuals versus hardcore and casuals against casuals. You could have had a really nice debate that could have potentially flowered over social media before you just kind of revealed the controversy behind the finish. But I still think that was probably the best way to go. So, it is what it is. Overall, my wife was awake through the entire thing. It didn't hurt that, she would absolutely, at the drop of a hat, leave me for Jon Stewart, or probably Roman Reigns, honestly, as soon as she realizes that he was The Rock's cousin. If there's any pathway to The Rock for her, then, she's going to take it. But it was nice that, as silly as a lot of it was, I was able to enjoy a pay-per-view with my wife, who really isn't a fan for the entire duration of the show. So I can deal with that. I can handle that. To me, that says the show wasn't awful, right? If someone who isn't really a fan can hang out through the entire show of 4 hours, right? If they can hang out through the show for 4 hours, it couldn't have been all that bad.